How's it going, guys? It's K Cars, and in today's video we're going to talk about 5 reasons why you should not buy a Jeep Cherokee XJ. Should be a pretty interesting video, so I hope you guys enjoy. Alright guys, so before we get into the actual topic of today's video, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on something. So I am thinking about kind of changing up the vehicle lineup on the channel here. So as you guys know, I currently have the Jeep and the Challenger. Now, I have been thinking of either trading in the Challenger for a Camaro ZL1 1LE, or just adding a Jeep Wrangler JL to the channel. So it's either adding a third vehicle, the Jeep Wrangler JL, or trading in the Challenger for a ZL1 1LE. So those are the two options that I'm kind of thinking about, and I wanted to hear your opinions on that. So let me know down in the comments what you guys would like to see, or if you just want me to stick with the Challenger and the Jeep for now. With that being said, of course you guys know I'm never planning on actually getting rid of my Jeep Cherokee XJ. This would just be an addition. So before I actually get going with the topic of today's video, I do want to say this video is mostly made just as a joke. Obviously I love my Jeep Cherokee XJ, otherwise I wouldn't have one and take such good care of it. But yeah, just wanted to say that before you guys get all mad at me or whatever. So hope you guys enjoy. Let's go ahead and get into the topic of today's video, which is 5 reasons why you should not buy a Jeep. So obviously this video is kind of a joke because obviously I love these XJs. But if you guys are familiar with these old Jeeps, then you're probably familiar with the 4.0 liter inline 6 that a lot of people love about these Jeeps, including myself. So I've talked to a bunch of people about these things, and pretty much everybody has said that the 4.0 inline 6 in these old Jeeps is probably the most bulletproof engine that you can get in any type of vehicle. Now obviously there's also a bunch of different engines that are also very reliable, but for a Jeep this is definitely probably the most reliable engine that you could get. Of course there's also the 2.5 liter engine option that you can get with the XJ. But like I said, the 4.0 liter is definitely the one that you want to get if you are planning to get a Jeep Cherokee XJ. Further, it's just a lot more reliable than the 2.5 liter. So one reason that you should not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ is if you don't want a vehicle that has a reliable engine. So there's plenty of options out there if you guys don't want a reliable vehicle, but if you are looking for a reliable vehicle, the Jeep Cherokee XJ is definitely a great option for you. So like I said, if you're not looking for a reliable vehicle, then you should probably not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ. Alright, so that was number 1. So then the number 2 reason why you should not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ is if you don't like to have an off-road capable vehicle. So obviously this Jeep in its completely stock form is extremely off-road capable. I'll throw up a few clips of me kind of off-roading this Jeep back when it was completely stock.
Right through it. I lied.
Let's see how the Jeep does going through these little mud holes right here. It's nothing serious, but they're definitely, like, you know, they're pretty big. They're not too deep though. So obviously it's handling it just fine. There we go. This is probably the biggest one here, I'd say. Yeah, no problem whatsoever.
Trucks are pretty big. Let's see how it handles it. It took him like a champ. The rear suspension took a little bit of a beating, but besides that, it's holding up.
So as you guys could see, obviously we weren't doing any kind of crazy off-roading, but even in its completely stock form, you guys could see it had a very good amount of flex in the stock suspension, even though it was sagging. And also it had very good traction. We didn't like slip or anything during that video, and it was a whole bunch of fun even though it was stock. So if you guys are not looking for a vehicle that is very off-road capable, even in stock form, then you should not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ. But I also did want to mention that there's a whole bunch of aftermarket support for these Jeeps as well as Wranglers. So if you guys are into off-roading and you want to have an off-road capable vehicle, even in its completely stock form, then the XJ is definitely a very good option. But like I said, if you are looking for a vehicle that is not off-road capable, then you probably should not get an XJ. So the third thing that I'm going to mention here in today's video kind of is like an actual problem, but not really, because it's kind of like the whole fun part of owning an old XJ like this. And that would be, do not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ if you do not want to fix or replace a bunch of different parts on this Jeep. So like I said, the 4.0 liter inline six on these XJs is definitely a very reliable engine, but with that being said, it does have a few parts that do go bad. So some examples of the parts that I've replaced on this Jeep would be the water pump, thermostat, a few hoses, stuff like that. So it's just like basic maintenance that you would do to an old vehicle anyways, if you want to keep it in good shape. So like I said, the 4.0 liter engine is very reliable and, you know, bulletproof like many people say, but it does have a few parts that do go bad, just like any other engine. So there really is no way to get around that. Even if you take extremely good care of the Jeep, it's always going to have parts that either rust out or maybe rot out, such as a fuel vapor tube. Those things rust pretty easily, and I had to replace that one on my Jeep as well. It was causing a check engine light. So that's just another example of things that you would most likely have to either fix or replace on your Jeep. So if you do not plan to fix or replace several parts on your Jeep Cherokee XJ, then you probably shouldn't get one. So like I said, that was the third reason why you should not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ. I think it's part of owning a Jeep. Part of owning a Jeep and part of the fun of owning a Jeep is just getting underneath there or whatever you have to do and just fixing it up and making it run as good as it can. Now the fourth thing that I'm going to talk about in today's video is that if you don't want to own one of the most iconic off-road vehicles ever produced, then you probably shouldn't get a Jeep Cherokee XJ. So of course there's many different off-road vehicles you can choose from, Jeeps in my opinion being the most popular and the most off-road worthy, and you know, my favorite as well, obviously. But if you're not looking to own one of the most iconic off-road vehicles that was ever produced, then you probably shouldn't get an XJ. Now, like I said, some of the different options that are out there, you know, the Wranglers, all the different types of Wranglers like the CJs, TJs, YJ, all those different Wrangler options. There's also the Grand Cherokee, so the ZJ, WJ. And then you also have different vehicle brands such as the 4Runners maybe, or the FJ Cruisers. There's a whole bunch of different off-road vehicles that you can get, but in my opinion, the XJ is definitely one of the most iconic that people think about. There's also the Bronco, which is another iconic off-road vehicle, but that's more of a truck. Now, if you're thinking about like a strictly off-road only vehicle, then, you know, most likely a Jeep will come to your mind. That's kind of what these things are made for. And you know, the Wranglers are basically the only current production models that are still made for off-roading. So I definitely would like to see Jeep bring back like an old model of the Cherokee. I think that would sell very well and people would definitely love that. So like I said, in my opinion, the XJ is definitely one of the most iconic off-road vehicles that you can get. Of course, produced from 1984 up until 2001. And luckily the one that I have is actually the 2001, which is of course the last year that they produced the XJ. And a lot of people do complain that the 2000s and 2001 models are actually one of the worst years that you can get, but in my opinion, I love it, and I think it's cool to have the absolute last year that they actually produced these. Now, some of the reasons why people say to stay away from the 2000 and 2001s is because they don't have a distributor for the spark plugs. They actually just have a coil pack and no distributor, no spark plug wires. So some people don't like that. I really don't mind it. I haven't had a problem. I did have two different check engine lights for the same thing. It was actually a cylinder 3 misfire. And I'm not really sure what caused that, because after I cleared the code, it didn't come back except for the second time. And I'm hoping it's not going to come back a third time now, but it's been almost, I would say, like a year, and I haven't had any issues with any kind of misfire or anything. So like I said, no issues with my 2001 Jeep Cherokee XJ here. And like I said, I also do prefer having a 2001 over a earlier year of an XJ. just because I think it's cool to have the last year that these things were ever produced. Now, the fifth thing on this list is actually an actual problem that I also dealt with, and that would be, do not get a Jeep Cherokee XJ if you don't want to deal with a bunch of rust problems. So if you guys are familiar with these old Jeeps, then you know that they do have a lot of rust issues, especially if they were driven on roads with a bunch of salt or, you know, snowy conditions, stuff like that. The most common areas for rust on these Jeeps is, of course, the rocker panels. And then one spot that isn't as visible is the rear lower quarter panels. So I made a whole video of all the rust repairs that were done to this thing. It's basically completely rust free, aside from a few small rust patches on like the bottom of the doors and the roof as well, which I am planning to fix up eventually. But you guys have to keep in mind, rust removal and replacing sheet metal is actually pretty expensive because it does require welding and actual like fabrication and painting and all that stuff. So I did do parts of this Jeep myself, such as the door jambs, which was basically just sanding off the rust, making sure it's all clean, then primer and paint. And I made a few videos on that process as well if you guys want to check that out. But I also did have a shop replace the whole inner and outer rockers on both sides, as well as the inner and outer rear lower quarter panels on both sides. So that's all fixed up. I don't have to worry about that until it happens again, and hopefully it doesn't. But like I said, rust problems are basically impossible to not have on an old Jeep like this, unless you just don't drive it or just keep it in dry conditions all of its life, which is pretty hard to find a Jeep like that is completely rust free and completely original. But if you do find one, it's definitely going to be pretty expensive, because these things are definitely going up in value, as you guys have probably seen if you're looking at the Jeep Cherokee XJ market right now. These things are definitely going up in value. Whenever I took my Jeep to the body shop to actually get all those rust repairs done, it was a lot of money, and it was around $2,400 to get everything done that I mentioned. So inner and outer rocker panels on both sides, inner and outer rear lower quarter panels on both sides. That includes paint as well, and then they also did some descaling on the underside and applied fluid film to prevent any further rust from happening. So like I said, bodywork is definitely very expensive. Any kind of rust repairs are going to be very expensive, especially if it includes actually cutting out the rust and welding in new sheet metal. That's where all the expensive work comes in, because it includes welding, obviously, so that takes skill and time. Paint definitely also takes skill and time. So yeah, rust repairs are definitely something that you should be expecting to deal with if you are planning on getting a Jeep Cherokee XJ. And if you don't want to deal with those rust repairs, then you probably shouldn't be getting a Jeep Cherokee XJ or any kind of old Jeep. But with that being said, like with anything in today's video, all these negative things that I mentioned are part of the, you know, part of the whole process of owning an old Jeep like this and kind of fixing it up and restoring it. So in my opinion, I think it's all part of the fun. You learn a bunch of new things having an old Jeep like this. All right guys, so like I said, I did make a whole video on the rust repairs that were done to my Jeep, but let me just show you guys real quick here what I was talking about. So right here is the driver's side rocker panel. So that's what I got replaced. As you guys can see, it's pretty clean down here. Got the pinch welds very clean right there as well. And then for the rear lower quarter panels, we can take a look at those right over here. Now these are kind of harder to see because they are covered up by the bumper end caps right here, but this whole back section right here was basically just a whole big hole, so most of it was actually non-existent. So I'm very happy with that. Obviously, same thing on the passenger side here. Now this rocker actually was not as bad as the passenger side, but as you can see there, brand new rocker panel as well. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't want you guys to think that I was being negative, because obviously I love Jeep Cherokee XJs, otherwise I would not have one, and I would not be trying to keep this thing very nice and restore it. But a few of these things on my list were actual problems, such as the rust or replacing or fixing different things on the Jeep just to keep it in good shape. But like I said, this video was mostly just meant as a joke, and hopefully you guys were able to take it that way. And yeah, like I said, Jeep Cherokee XJ, great vehicles for everything, daily driving, off-roading, pretty much anything you can think of, except for like performance, like driving fast, driving around a track. completely different cars that you would need for that type of driving, and obviously the Jeep Cherokee XJ was not made to even do anything like that. And it's great at doing what it was made for, which is off-roading, of course. This winter, I am planning on doing some more action-packed videos with this XJ. So obviously nothing crazy, but I am planning on actually taking this Jeep out and doing some exploring instead of just doing talking videos like this. So yeah, I think it would just be cool to go out and explore some rural areas here in Virginia. And yeah, let me know if that's something you guys would like to see in the future. And also, like I said in the beginning of this video, you know, I was thinking about maybe trading in the Challenger for a ZL1 1LE, or just adding a Jeep Wrangler JL as a third vehicle. So it would either be trading in the Challenger for a ZL1 or adding on a Jeep Wrangler JL. Obviously, this Jeep right here isn't going anywhere. I'm planning on keeping it for as long as I can. The JL would be a vehicle that I would use for actual off-roading, because as you guys know, I kind of feel bad taking this Jeep off-roading just because it's so old and so rare, and it's in such good condition right now that I almost feel bad off-roading it, even though that's what it's made to do. So if I do get a JL, then that would be kind of like my off-road vehicle that I actually take on actual trails. So yeah, I think that would be very fun. As for the ZL1, that would just be an upgrade from the Challenger, just to have something a little bit quicker, something with some more power as well. And I also love the looks of the 1LE package on those things, especially with all the added aerodynamic stuff that the 1LE package has. Yeah, let me know your thoughts down in the comments on that, or if you guys think I should just keep the Challenger and this Jeep right here, also let me know down in the comments. All right guys, so I realized that I completely forgot to do an outro for this video. So if you guys have any questions or comments or video suggestions for videos that you would like to see in the future, make sure to drop those down in the comments below. And if you guys like this video or found it entertaining, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.